Hello, book nerds. My name is Alana, and this is my channel in which I review books. And there was no video this past week because all of my equipment died. So I have a converter, USB converter for my mic because I hook it up to my phone, which is why I got this phone because the camera quality is fantastic. And then my ring lights died, and I had no audio, and I was like, whatever, forget it. I had to order a new ring lights. And word to wise, if you have Apple products, it's sometimes just better to throw in the extra pennies and spend the money for the Apple made adapters, because there's nothing like filming or recording a 20 plus minute video and then find out that you had no audio. So here we are with new and improved equipment. I actually like this tripod better. I like the way that I can adjust the light a little bit more. Anyway, let's get into this. I am going to take a break this week from the book reviews, and I'm going to do the Midyear Freakout Tag, which is why I've got these books stacked up behind me. So I am going to go through these questions, and then as I'm going through these questions, I'm going to ad-lib a little bit and just also incorporate what I anticipate my next top reads for the second half of the year are going to be, and where my focus is going to be for the second 6 months of the year, which is crazy that this year is half over, but it is what it is. I'm also a little bit in a food coma. I'm recording this after I got back from my grandmother's house because it was her birthday this week, and the food was good. The cake was super sweet, and I'm feeling it behind my eyes. Like, the food coma is real. So bear with me if I seem a little woo. Yeah, cake. Gone are the days of my youth when I could eat a lot of food and not feel it. I'm feeling it today. I will burn this off in my dance classes tomorrow. Let's jump into this. Best book you've read so far in 2022. I'm just going to recap what my 5-star reads of the year thus far have been. I do not know what I'm considering to be my top read of the year because I have another 6 months of reading to go. So these are my 5-star reads thus far. I have read to date, I think, 24 books. Hold on, let me look this up. 24 books this year, which for me is pretty good. I am not one of those people who can make it through, 60, 70, 80 plus books a year. That's just not feasible for me and my lifestyle. But if I make it to 50, I'm like, oh, that's great. I didn't set a goal or a limit about what I wanted my goal to be for this year. Why put the pressure on myself? Last year I read about 30 something, and I was content with that. Because they were good books. But overall, out of the 24 books that I've read, 4 of them have been 5-star reads. I am picky with my 5-star reads. Most of my books this year out of the 24 are 4-star reads. It's very normal for me to have a 4-star review just because I generally like what I read, because I am very particular about what I choose to read. I have this system that kind of works for me and how I choose the books that I want to add to my TBR, and overall, I know my taste. So those 5 stars that I've had thus far were Outlander, the first book, The Hobbit, The Idiot by Elif Batuman, and Life in Motion, which was a nonfiction work, autobiography of Misty Copeland, the principal ballerina of ABT. My next anticipated 5-star reads, I'm anticipating The Count of Monte Cristo, War and Peace, and A Gentleman in Moscow to be my next 5-star reads. Jane Eyre is a reread for me this year, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but I know that's a 5-star read, so I didn't include that. Best sequel you've read so far in 2022. And when I read this question at first, I was like, did I read any sequels? And then come to find out, yes, I have read sequels. So Transit by Rachel Cusk, which is part of her Outline trilogy. I read that this year. Review coming soon. Either Or by Elif Batuman, which is the follow-up to The Idiot. Heroes by Stephen Fry, which is really the second installment of his after Mythos, and then Troy is next. The House with the Golden Door, which is over here, and I'll talk about that later, which is Elodie Harper's sequel in her Wolf Den trilogy. I am but I have bring up The Bodies here, again, which I'll talk about later, by Hilary Mantel, which is part of the Wolf Hall trilogy, so I will be reading that later in the year. New release you haven't read yet, but want to. This has been the year of debut novels and new releases for me. I usually do not keep up with new releases, but for some reason this year I have been really, really intrigued by new releases and debut novels. And just today I was on the interwebs and stumbled across two debut novels, both that were released in the latter part of last year, and they're already sitting in my online cart. It's inevitable. I'm going to buy them. But what I currently own as a new release that I'm really excited to read is Lapvana by Atessa Moshfegh, which is in transit because it was just released the last week of June, and Electra by Jennifer Saint, which is buried way in the back. I haven't even read Ariadne yet, but I do plan to read that this year. But when this was released in May, I went on and snagged it. I mean, how could I resist? I mean, I love Greek myth retellings, and I snagged a first edition paperback. My fellow Americans, Canadians in some cases too. If you have a hard time getting your hands on a first edition paperback, because often I find that in the United States, the hardback is released first, I just go and get it shipped from England, because between Waterstones and Blackwell's, I can get a paperback. There's your tip for the day. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year, Medusa by Natalie Hayes. I haven't even read any of Natalie Hayes' all other books. Was 1,000 Ships. There's another one. She has other Greek myth retellings. But when I found out that Medusa, a few weeks ago, she's coming out with the Medusa retelling, I was like, yep, hands down buying it. Medusa was really my gateway into the Greek myths from a very young age. I mean, elementary school age. I remember my dad watching this old school, I can't even remember when it was released, and I don't know the name, but I remember it was a super old film. It wasn't color, but it was the story of, what is his name? Crap. Perseus. That's who it was. Perseus goes and has to get a Gorgon head, and Medusa was turned into a Gorgon. And so that was my first introduction to the Greek myth. So Medusa her story has always been very, very prevalent in the front of my mind. So I've always been fascinated by Medusa. So I am going to pick that retelling up when it is released. Of course, it's getting released in the UK. It's getting released in the UK. It probably won't be released in the US until next year. But again, Blackwell's be looking out for you, girls. So, yep. Biggest disappointment of the year, Maul Flanders by Daniel Defoe. If you watched my review of that, several videos down, I hated that book. I just think Daniel Defoe is not for me. It was so boring. The book was horrible. I gave it 1 star. I couldn't even finish it. I had 63 pages to go and I just couldn't do it. And it's not even in the house anymore. I had to get rid of it. Biggest surprise, The Idiot by Elif Batuman. I love that book. It's so good. I'm still thinking about it. Definitely The Idiot by Elif Batuman. Favorite new author, debut or new to you, Elif Batuman. The Idiot took me was such a surprise for me that then I found out, Either Or is coming out. I gobbled that up. And then I recently read her nonfiction work called The Possessed. So yeah, I gobbled up all of her published books this year already. So she is coming out with Celine's story in a 3rd installment, but somebody left a comment and told me that it's going to pick up in her 30s. So we're not getting any more of Celine's undergrad years, but I'm going to trust Bottom in that she knows what she's doing. Newest fictional crush. This was tricky for me. I was going to say NA, not applicable. But just for the sake of having an answer, I'm going to make something up. So in the house with the golden door, again, the second installment to the Wolf Den trilogy, I am going to say Phylos. He is a love interest in this book for the main character. And I don't know, he's just a really fascinating character. I mean, I like his personality as a character. So again, that's just me picking a character for the sake of picking a character. If I had to, this is not new, but I did reread Outlander this year. So I'm going to have to go and throw my boy Jamie Fraser in there because it's Jamie. Okay. I love me some Jamie Fraser. Probably one of my favorite fictional male characters ever. Because the man got it going on. And, having a little beefcake around every now and then ain't too bad, ain't it? If you go back and watch my Outlander review, I made a comparison of beefcake versus cupcake. Like, Frank is cupcake. Not that there's anything wrong with Frank. He's cupcake. Jamie is beefcake. Moving on. Newest favorite character. Again, Celine in The Idiot and Either Or. She's quirky and weird and misunderstood and over analytical, and she just doesn't get it and socially awkward. And I just thought that she's endearing. Britannica, again, from the house with the golden door. She is a friend of the main character, Amara, and she was enslaved by the Roman Empire, because the Romans actually went all the way up into what is now modern day Britain, and the Britain tribes the Romans could never really quite get a handle on those tribes. They were wild, right? They were really, really difficult for the Romans to subdue, and the Romans never fully succeeded in subduing and conquering the Roman tribes, but they did end up capturing some. Many were used as gladiators, especially the men, because they were already tribes in which fighting was a huge part of the tribal culture. Even the women were taught how to fight. And so Britannica is a Briton, and she's just hardcore, and I love it. I need a whole spin-off series of just that character because she says what everybody else is thinking. And almost, in as few amount of words as needed. She just gets to the point. She's probably one of my favorite characters. Also, I am currently reading, as of this video, I'm almost done with it though, Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. And I like the main character, Miss Furukura. I relate to her a lot. She is just a character who is viewing society from the outside and as a misfit. And so her commentary on how people interact socially within the framework of the script of society is, I find, very fascinating. Book that made you cry. I am not a crier, so I put NA. No book has really made me cry this year. But I said if I had to choose, I would choose Life in Motion by Misty Copeland. Misty Copeland, again, it didn't make me cry, but there were a few moments in that book where I was like, my throat get a little tight. I just found parts of it to be really endearing, but I didn't cry. There were no tears coming out his eyes, okay? Did any book make me cry last year? A Little Life didn't even make me cry. I'm not saying that A Little Life wasn't sad, very sad, but Alana was not crying. Sometimes I joke and say I have the emotional range of a doorknob, but I'm just not a crier. That's not how I express myself. Books that made you happy. Mythos by Stephen Fry, because I like listening to his audiobooks as he's narrating his own work. So, and I'd like to describe it as your grandfather reading to you. And it was also very funny. Stephen Fry's retellings of the Greek myths are just so good. They're just funny and relatable, without being, they still feel antiquated in a way, but relatable to the modern reader. But he doesn't make it so modern that it's off-putting, if that makes sense. The Hobbit, because The Hobbit was just adorable. I put Beach Read ? Here by Emily Henry. I just finished that recently. And I will just say that for a contemporary romance, it did what it was supposed to do. It was light. It was quick. You know, as anticipated, it had a happy ending. And it was nice to read something that I know I could just, it was a quick read and compulsive, perfect for summer when you don't really want to think too much. So it served its purpose. But best thing I've ever read. No, review coming soon. Most beautiful book you've brought so far this year or received. I don't receive many books because I think people are scared to give me books because they don't know what I already own, but definitely The House with the Golden Door. This cover, good stuff. I love it. I love this cover. I'm curious to know what the third installment is going to look like. I'm anticipating maybe a green cover, a red cover, or a purple cover, because maybe yellow. No, I don't know, because the first, has nothing to do with this tag. The first book is orange. This one is blue. I'm going to say green, red, or purple. We shall see. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? I'm going to rephrase this. I don't need to read anything by the end of the year. Okay, this is a hobby. What books do I want to read, or what books am I prioritizing for the end of the year? And that is this massive stack of chunkers here. So I have the book that is bigger than my hand span, War and Peace by my boy Tolstoy, because I'm saving this chunker for November and December when there is a lot of holiday leave going on and I'm in a food coma, and the only thing I can do is sit on the couch in stretchy pants and read. So here you go. You hear that thunk? Let's see. Jane Eyre, my favorite book of all time. And I do not have an annotated book copy of Jane Eyre, so I'm going to reread this for the fourth time and actually annotate it. So Jane Eyre, and I haven't read Jane Eyre, I think, since 2018. So 18? Yes, it's been since 2018. I will be starting this one in July. Monte Cristo is one of my most anticipated reads of the year. It is chunky, but again, for a how did this get twisted? I'm a mess. But for a classic, again, I've heard that this is a quick read, so it moves quickly. So I'm going to be curious to know how much of this I can actually knock out in the month of July, especially with a holiday weekend in there. My edition, this is the only unabridged edition, FYI, if you want to read this book. I highly recommend that you get the Penguin Classics edition because it is the only completely unabridged work of this book. And I think it's a long one. It's a long one. It's over 1,200 pages, so. Ooh. Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel. Again, the second installment of the Wolf Hall trilogy. So, I really liked the first one. And it didn't take me as long to read the first one as I anticipated. Once I kind of got in the groove of how Hilary Mantel writes, because the writing in this is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit cryptic in some ways. She did it on purpose, but you do have to pay attention. But once I kind of got in the groove, it was smooth sailing. And for a book that was almost 600 pages, it took me about 3 weeks to read it. So this one is definitely shorter. It's 400 and something pages. So that's one. A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. Look at this cover. So good. I am going to start this one when I finish Monte Cristo. And then last but most certainly not least, the most cliched conclusion statement of all time, The Fellowship of the Ring. I have already read this at least twice. So again, I want to reread it. The last time I read it was in 2015. So, again, and I don't have one that I've really annotated. And yes, I'm going to annotate this stunning hardback edition that is also illustrated. Because again, I always say my books are not artifacts. But I'm going to make an effort to get to that one. So that one doesn't go on the floor. So yeah, those are my priority reads. Really what I'm saying is if I don't read any other book for the next 6 months, these are the ones that I'm going to try to focus on. Books that I'm actually going to take off my list that I put in my priority reads for 2020 video at the very beginning of the year. I'm taking The Old Curiosity Shop off by Charles Dickens. I try to read a Charles Dickens once a year, but for some reason I just don't feel like it, so I'm not going to do that. The Italian by Anne Radcliffe I'm taking off. Again, I've kind of lost my mojo to read it, so I will bank that for another time. Mansfield Park by Jane Austen, which is the only Jane Austen I have not read yet. But yeah, I'm going to bank that for later. Just if I can squeeze in any of those three, it would be Mansfield Park. But if I don't, whatever, I'll put on the shelf for later. My hair is in the way. It feels kind of stringy. Might be humidity. All right. That is my mid-year freakout tag. It's not really a freakout for me, you know? I've been having a pretty good reading year thus far. I feel like my reading has been very focused. And by that I mean I'm less distracted this year. I don't reach for my phone as much. I'm really enjoying what I'm reading. I'm plowing through books at a rate I haven't plowed through books ever. So I have my stack of books to be reviewed. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's pretty hefty. And I'm finishing them faster than I can review them, which for me is a good thing. So yeah, I'm going to leave that there. My next video coming up, or my next couple of videos coming up, will actually be back to the book reviews. I have a Catch-22 book review and Cleopatra and Frankenstein. And then after that, still more book reviews. Transit by Rachel Cusk, Milkband by Anna Burns, Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee, The House of the Golden Door, The Possessed by Ella Bodeman, Grove by Esther Kinsey, The Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, blah, blah, blah. So lots of reviews coming up. I hope you stick around. What has been your most notable read or your favorite read of 2022 thus far? And what was the worst? Probably wasn't as bad as Maul Flanders. 0 out of 10. Don't recommend it. All right. All of my links are down below. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe. And if you want to follow me on other platforms, I am on the Instagrams. And you can follow me there where I get up to shenanigans. And I try to post a funny meme at least once a day. And videos of huskies singing into auto-tune mics because I love huskies. So I'm going to wrap this up. And bye.